One of the things that really drew me to Rivero was that he was really just a good person, kind-hearted, knew a lot about music, knew a lot about DJing.
Really happy, like his energy was vibrant. Like when he would smile, he'd just be all teeth, you know, and his smile is something that's like unique to him, you know, and he kind of has like this half-cocked smile that he would start from one side and then it would like just grow and take over his whole mouth, and you'd feel like, here is someone that I can sit with, I can talk with, I can vibe with.
So my impressions of Rivero's work was, you know, it's really, really good. He has a ton of potential.
My first impression was, oh, I have to help this person get his work in front of others.
Multidisciplinary sort of type of creative where it's just like he can probably put his hands on anything and make it creative or make it beautiful or make it sort of impactful.
As soon as he started making art, it was abundantly apparent that he had innate, gifted skills. He does hyper-realistic paintings that are watercolor. So that means they look like they're exactly, you know, like the person is coming off the easel, but it's done with watercolor. And you know, to say that few people can do that is an understatement.
I've gotten to know Rivero. I've wanted to in some ways be his own agent of growth, because it has certainly the aesthetics, a universal aesthetics that could go anywhere, that I think he should be making money off of. Like the public art commissions that are going on right now in DIA is multi-million dollars.
His work was shattering the myths of what it meant to be kind of cast in a black man identity, and that he was able to kind of show, be, and create a body of work that gave us a glimpse of how to see a more hopeful future in spite of oppression and within oppression.
He's an amazing photographer, he's a sculptor, he's a painter, the kind of creator that isn't afraid to take chances and to also express himself through his work. So he really is a Renaissance man when it comes to the arts here in Denver.
A lot of potential to sort of do work in Denver, not only in Denver, in other places that no one else was doing. And he had like you know, the support of Redline and Reach Studios and other artists behind him as well.
I think that he's built his resume and his portfolio up enough to where he could have an individual studio and be self-sufficient as an artist, especially with the right network. I'd put him up there with any of the contemporary artists that I know earning a living in this city right now, hands down.
There's no question in my mind that if he put his passion and skills to work, he would have been a breakthrough artist whose work I collected with that with that sensibility.
His body of work and his ability and momentum had brought him to that kind of like on the tipping point of taking that next big step where it really starts to become real.
Here in Denver, 3 security guards at Union Station under arrest accused of beating up a man in the bathroom. James Hunter and Victor Diaz are facing assault charges. Their sergeant, Taylor Taggart, is accused of being an accessory to the crime. Police say the guards got into an argument with the victim while he was waiting for a train.
Anyone who knew Rivero prior to the attack could tell that something horrible had happened to him.
He's detached, I guess would be the best word to use about him now. He's most of the time when we have conversations, he's a little confused. He's always saying, I'm sorry. He's like, I'm sorry, I should know this, I should have remembered this, or I'm sorry this, or I'm sorry that.
And then when I saw Rivero and realized just how severely his faculties and his disposition had changed, it made me, sad. And now it takes him a while to kind of complete sentences and to call up ideas and people's names and so forth.
It was just so clear that, yeah, it was a traumatic brain injury or something because of the cognitive dissonance that was going on in our, what would have been a regular dialogue or communication. And so you could tell that he was also, I think, hiding because he was embarrassed because of what had happened to him and felt like he no longer was the person that he used to be prior to the attack, and that this was a disability that was taking over him.
There's common things that happen after an injury. There's difficulty with cognitive function, there's emotional lability and change in personality, presentation. There's sleep disturbances, pain issues. If you take a look at the list of symptoms that he presents with 2 years after, they fit the picture of someone who's had a traumatic brain injury from which he has not recovered and likely will not given the time frame. For example, if somebody gets knocked out, once they wake up, they should be getting better, right? But not necessarily. So, what happens is an impact hits the skull, or in some cases it doesn't require there to be a direct impact. For example, if your head spins through space with a whiplash injury, your skull is still stable, but when it stops on its spin, the brain then spins within it.
It's not like a very tangible, visible sort of scar, but it's like one of those sort of hidden ones that you don't really know or see that really can affect you. Sometimes those are a lot of times the worst because, it's like that, like I said, it's like that core thing about you that's sort of missing now.
He reminds me really of like when my grandmother post a stroke, actually, where she couldn't remember things that had just happened or things that should have been really in her lexicon of her memory. That's kind of how he behaves now. Like he kind of had a stroke. Photos that he used to take, which would be very sharp and clean, and the composition would be perfect, the lighting would be perfect. The last couple of things that I've had him do for me post attack, a lot of shots have been blurry. The composition hasn't been the greatest. He's not taking the same volume of photos that he used to take during an event. So I've seen his artwork suffer in that way.
Whether it's real or perceived, he does not feel like he can be an artist anymore, that he cannot create the work that he was once able to create. And certainly I think that's evidenced by the fact that he hasn't.
There's so many times when a person's clearly had a head injury, a brain injury, and the imaging looks fine. It's just not the modality that we need to make the diagnosis. Now, if there are findings on the scan that further supports the clinical diagnosis of a traumatic brain injury, and we also would expect that's a significant trauma in order to cause it. Here's a person who's been severely injured, cognitively, emotionally, socially, has interrupted all of his social networks, all of his lines of support. His behavior has changed, and we're expecting him to manage his own care, to figure out how to get to appointments when he can't. In Rivero's case, there's been a fairly severe disruption of what he can do cognitively and what he can do socially and interacting with others that is not coming back. And it's put him in a situation where he's not able to be his own best advocate, not able to work his way through the decisions, and not comfortable trusting people who potentially could be there for him. So he's left very isolated, and it's a challenging situation for further improvement. His balance is off. If he moves his head from side to side as he walks, he's going to fall into the wall. So that's certainly an impairment. Sleep is quite difficult for him. If he's not having difficulty sleeping because of the pain that he's in, he'll have difficulty with sleep onset, and then he's a lot of trouble with sleep maintenance, which leaves him tired during the day. He's thin, he's having trouble maintaining weight, he's constantly nauseated. And it's, you know, so these are things that affect every day. You know, is he going to be, he needs food. He has to make a decision whether he chooses to eat or not, because first it hurts for him to chew because his face hurts. And second, he's nauseated when he has to swallow it down. Then he also has moments when he reaches a certain threshold where he becomes overwhelmed and then essentially is unable to function until he can recover from that.
You know, for him to not be able to create, it's like you lose that commission, you lose those opportunities to work with the city or submit to a residency or to, you know, even graduate, you know, classes that he was taking.
And I think you know, we're now dealing with a person who's had a significant injury to the brain that's not recovering. So in taking a look at what does Mr. Stinnett need now and what we need going forward, the first is to recognize this is a man with a permanent injury and permanent disability. And we can do a lot to help facilitate and improve his quality of life to a point, but there are some things that he will not be able to do on his own. And so he needs actual help. He doesn't need a computer that he gets to work at and do better because he needs human beings to support him and be able to fill in for the areas where he cannot.
Just knowing that, you know, he's just not the same kind of artist that he was pre-assault, I would say would be like a little slice of hell to an artist of his caliber. Something like this could have happened to an artist like that means that it can happen to any of us, you know? And what would that mean? What does that mean if men of color are able to be hunted and assaulted and have something very special taken away from them too at the same time, like this unique talent, this gift that this particular artist has. And I hope that whoever's seeing this video gets a chance to look at some of his artwork and really think about the caliber of work that you're looking at, and if you can distinguish between maybe someone that you see as an artist of high caliber and whether or not Rivero's work you know, stands up to it, you know, especially his photography. You know, I think it's pretty clear.
And I think like some of his creative brilliance, you know, was stunted, and you know, it just is gone potentially, and it's horrible. This man's severely affected. I mean, his world is completely changed. It's permanent. He's not going to get better. There's hope. It's not hopeless in that with the right people and situations around him, his life can be much more uplifted than it has been for the last couple of years, but we're still talking with severe limits. It's going to be challenging.
He's not going to have justice. If he's lost this creative piece to himself, then there can be no justice. There can be retribution, there can be people paying consequences for what they've done, but for him being the artist that he is and the person that he was too, if he never gets that back, there's no justice. There isn't any justice in this.